Welcome, agents, to strain 24-PBJ of the 0 Point Report, a broadcast all about the news surrounding the Secret World IP. Today is Thursday, July 9th, 2020, and I'm your host for this evening, Ocho. With me tonight, we have Ember.
Howdy, howdy.
We have Jimmy the Rabbit.
Ew.
We have Griff.
Hello.
And we have a special guest with us tonight. We have lead designer of Secret World Legends, Chris Nervell Meredith. How are you doing this fine evening, sir?
Hi there, doing pretty good.
I've put your name like that so many times. I just think your middle name is Nervell at this point.
It could effectively be yes.
It could have.
With the quotation marks.
With that's right. You use them or get out. That's the way to do it. So welcome to the stream. Checking out who we have in chat right now. I see some names. I see some names that I. JG, did I see correctly that there is a guest this stream? Yes, absolutely. So Nervell, just maybe would you like to introduce yourself to those who may not know who you are?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Chris, aka Nervell. I'm the lead designer in Secret World Legends. I've been on the Secret World Legends development team for 6 years, and I actually started working at Funcom as a GM on the Secret World about a month before it went live. And I played the beta before then. It just goes back a long ways, but the important thing is I'm the lead designer at the moment, and kind of the person who's messing up / fixing / whatever the game. It's
okay. Yes, I was talking with you earlier today, and I kind of was kind of confused as to what your title was, and you told me specifically it's lead designer. I said, how does that compare to a game director? And I thought what you told me was pretty good. So, yeah, how would you compare what you do to what a game director does and what a lead designer does?
So a lead designer specifically works with a team of designers. They're responsible for getting tasks allocated out, for actually getting the design of the game solid and in a state that's good and have people to understand it. Whereas a game director is more about driving the creative vision of the game as a whole and ensuring consistency. So a creative director will say something like, we need a dungeon in this zone. The lead designer goes in and says, all right, let's design these bosses and make sure the mechanics are fun and interesting.
Okay, yeah. And so you're kind of doing both.
At the moment, yes. I do have the creative drive for Secret World right now, but my focus is mainly on actual design work and implementation. I tend to be very in the trenches.
Very cool. Very cool. So one of the reasons why we have you on the show today specifically is because there is a big balance pass that will be coming to Secret World Legends, and it currently went into an open beta this past weekend. From let me bring it up here. Basically over the July 4th weekend, started July 3rd, ended July 6th. And was essentially going over some of these changes. And so I'm just going to read off some of these changes that this beta kind of went over. Now, also keep in mind, this is a beta. All of these are subject to change. Or Nervell, you could just say they're all permanent. You could just say that too, right?
Some of them might be. It's a beta for specifically that reason. We're trying things. We take the stuff that works the best. We keep it. We look at the problems that come up and we say, okay, let's fix these. That's why it's a beta as opposed to going straight to the live servers, because there were problems over the weekend and we're addressing them. That's the point.
Good. Okay. So the first bullet point is that tanks are being rebalanced. It says each tank weapon now has a unique identity, and proper defensive gear is now needed for your highest available elite level. Goes on to say, fear not, We have a plan to smooth the transition where this update reaches live. Surely you have had a chance to play around with the glyph exchangers. We'll be giving everyone a set of glyph exchangers for free when the rebalance reaches live. Healers have been rebalanced. They're now needed for your highest available elite level. Each heal weapon has its own flavor and playstyle. Several outlier weapons. I see that you actually put up a behemoth. It's very. I see everyone's still just kind of standing around like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do?
Behemoth
You hit it with a bat. That's what you do.
Go up and you hit it with a bat. We should know all about this.
I am quite experienced with hitting
Yes.
giant behemoths with a bat.
Several outlying weapon items and weapon types have received attention to address balance issues and bring the overall balance closer together. For example, Blood Magic's issues with soloing content has been addressed. Loot tables have been adjusted and updated with new items, including new empowerment catalysts, a rare new type of distillate, and a full new set of talismans. Dungeon queues have merged down to 7 queues total. Elite 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5 to 7, 8 to 10, 11 to 13, 14 to 16, and Elite 17. Manhattan Exclusion Zone.
And note that the merging of the queues was something done. Actually, it was originally a community request way back when we first started working on this, and it was a good idea, and it should help drive the community closer together. In that, I mean, there's fewer queues, more people are able to get teams, but also the queues are designed such that they are very generous. When you enter, say, an elite, I believe it's 8 to 10, the enemies are spawned with elite 8 stats, and you get elite 10 loot. And I want to stress that. The range, you fight the stuff at the bottom of the range, but you get loot for the top of the range. So it's very generous, and this will accelerate the curve for gearing up dramatically.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to miss that in the threads that were complaining about some horrible gear grind, and they were missing those little. It's there in the notes, but you have to read it, I guess.
Reading it helps.
Well, the notes do. They are very extensive. This is just a too long didn't read version.
Oh yes, that's valuable.
Yes. But going on, the Manhattan Exclusion Zone Elite 17 has been added, aimed at a skilled range of endgame players and with new mechanics to spice things up. As note, development is still in progress on the Elite 17 raid, and its loot table has not been implemented yet. One of the more exciting things, especially for a player such as me, the Penthouse Mini Dungeon has made a return and can be accessed via Elite 10+ dungeon queues. Seek and preserve scenarios and scaling solo missions, such as the Venetian Missile Crisis or Rogue Agent, now scale up to Elite 17.
So that one was a mix of, we changed some stuff in there, and while I was writing those notes, I kind of had a brain fart, and I forgot that we actually patched in a simplistic version of the scaling last year, I think it was, or with Valentine's.
Okay.
What we're actually doing is we're going back in and we're fixing the stats on the NPCs so that it's a better fit for the elite levels.
Ah, okay. And
because we did have E17 scaling for a bunch of that stuff.
Yeah, but it's going to be a lot more balanced
now. A question I have just based on this: it says the dungeon queues have merged down into 7 queues, but are the seek and preserve scenarios and like the individual repeatable missions that are like that, are they also scaled kind of the same way into 7 queues as well?
No, those have not been merged down. The reason the merge was happening was so that groups would be made easier. For stuff like seek and preserve, you do it usually solo or with a partner who you pre-group with. We don't see many people actually using the group finder to find a partner for those scenarios. So having the full range of 17 elites is preferable.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just preferable that you squish them for dungeon queuing, because it gets a lot harder when you divvy up the player base into 17 segments as opposed to 7.
and it could be argued even 7 is quite a bit as well.
Yeah, but I also
Yeah,
think
it might change in the future. We want to see how it actually performs on live first, though.
Yeah.
I feel like with the bottom tier difficulty with the top tier rewards for that tier, I feel like you'll just see people leap up the tiers. You know what I mean? I
Or at least go much faster than they were going previously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I meant. Like, I feel like that'll be a smoother process. Put it that way. I think it's gonna be a much smoother process because I definitely went up the hard way, where you're just like grinding stuff out, pulling out all the tricks you can to try and get that little bit more IP to jump into the next one, and then you do it like all over again. You know?
There was also the problem with the old and the current live system that it stopped at Elite 10, which meant that once you hit red 1s, you were continuing to grind up the rest of your red levels with loot designed for reaching red 1, which amplified it dramatically.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Because you're oh god. You spawned things, didn't you?
Yes.
I don't have the inventory space for this shit.
Thankfully,
You
I
monster.
barely do. Just barely.
What is this? Oh, pinch of blood. That's cool.
What did you give us?
Things.
Oh no, it's randomized.
Pretty things.
I'm now bleeding all over the ground. Yay!
Oh, I think this is from Halloween.
Yeah, I just stand still and I'm like in a little pool of blood. Like, I vaguely remember this. I don't know.
No, don't.
Yeah, that
don't
must come out at
freeze.
Halloween. But that icon looks so old. Yeah, and I have an end of days glamour. I saw that. Is it Baldwin Warrior glamour?
Servant of 7 deaths.
Yeah, there's some cool glamours in there.
That's fun.
Oh,
Continuing.
speaking of items, I have something for a raffle tonight.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have an emote evil laugh.
Ooh.
Ooh.
That's nice.
Yeah, so if anyone,
That's one of your favorites too.
Yeah, I love evil laugh. That thing's amazing. Where's Ember? Ember, where the hell are you?
I'm right in the middle
I'll
of
find
everything.
you. Are you? There you are.
I am having the worst
Oh, I
issues
look like a
staying in
mummy.
game tonight.
Yeah, I'm just gonna evil laugh in front of you.
But continuing on, and this is another big part that was instituted for this beta. The dungeon scenario lair key system is undergoing a rework, and opening dungeon scenario and lair loot boxes will no longer cost a key.
That is correct.
That is fascinating. Then the last step just says, please note that during this first phase, the rework has not been fully implemented. There will still be a use for keys. However, we're not at a stage to share specifics.
We are unfortunately still at that stage.
Okay.
As soon
I was
as
going to say, what do you have planned for them? But obviously, yeah.
Yeah, as soon as we actually have everything nailed down, concrete, and functioning the way we want, then of course we'll explain it and share it. But right now, it's still in progress.
Of course.
I mean, clearly you would go to the cat dimension and use the keys to open cat carriers, right? Like, that
Yeah.
just makes sense.
How did you figure it out?
Aha!
Everything revolves around cat carriers. It's just what it is. Okay, so just a basic look over this. We had a question from Leo Grimm, and Leo Grimm's question was essentially, why do you feel the rebalance was sort of needed in the first place? and it seems to be focused on tanks and healers specifically. Why do you think that that was sort of a necessary step to take?
In short, uh, okay. So when this was started to be worked on was back in November was when the first implementation started. And to be perfectly honest, when we started working on this, the plan was not actually to do a full rebalance like this. The plan was to scale up the dungeons to Elite 17 so that there was appropriate content for endgame players. But as we were starting to do that and we were going through the dungeons and converting them from the old scaling system to the current scaling system and looking at the math for how much damage these things need to do, we quickly realized it was absurd. There was no way that these would be balanced, that they would be fun to play. And we were always aware of the sustained meta, and most of us didn't like it. There were a couple people at the office who were interested in it, but I mean, it didn't feel good. It made the MMO unique role of the healer completely obsolete. It put way too much stress on the tank, and I I've personally believed that it was actually toxic for the lifespan of the game. And
Okay.
Mm.
in updating the dungeons, that's the perfect time to actually go in and fix that problem, to make both of the roles cooperative again, to make healers actually valuable and have a use, and dare I say mandatory, and actually making the dungeons properly balanced. And it was a it we started out estimating, oh, give us a month. This shouldn't be too bad. We'll take the tank cooldowns. We'll give them a 40-second or a minute cooldown. We'll change a few things. No, not even close. Uh, if you've actually looked at the implementations for the three different tanks and for the healers maybe a 25% redesign on them. Tanks entire redesign.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's I don't like. It's hard for me to recognize what's going on.
Yep.
Uh, Partially because I spent most of the beta enabling other people to test that. Like, to properly test, right? You need 3 DPS, a tank, and a healer. Doesn't work if everyone's testing tank. And I knew enough good tanks that I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna try and give you some baseline DPS and let you guys work out what's working or not. So I personally still need to go figure out the new tanking. Just haven't spent much time on it, but from what I've seen of the abilities and stuff, yeah, it's vastly different.
So, how would you explain the differences? Like what sort of examples? Like, for example, what sort of differences are we talking about?
So tanking has taken. This may sound a little weird, but its focus has shifted from the offense to the defense. As a tank, your responsibility should be on keeping yourself alive, on timing your cooldown strategically, on using your signature ability either as frequently as you can or line it up with boss mechanics to provide the maximum benefit. I realize I just said something there that some people may not know about. So, as part of the rebalance, every tanking weapon receives something called a signature ability. And this is an ability with a 30-second cooldown that buffs you in some way to increase your defense uh, and damages things in a 10-meter radius. And these are kind of special and unique in that when you successfully mitigate damage or you do your weapon mechanic, their cooldown is reduced. So, for a properly geared tank, you can probably cast your signature about every 12 seconds, which gives you a lot of uptime. And a really skilled tank will be timing that with the boss attacks or the boss mechanics, so that when the boss is actually hitting you, you've got your signature up, you've got some active defense going, you've got some way to help yourself stay alive. So it's all about shifting that focus to I want to be as sturdy as I can so my healer can keep me up easily and so that I just don't die at all.
And of course, trying to keep all the mobs still focused on me.
That is yeah, that's still a focus, but less so. The focus has shifted more towards just survival and interacting properly with
Yeah.
fight mechanics.
Okay.
To that point, the hate. So, to cover the change to the abilities, there's no longer abilities in the bottom row that generate hate. They don't generate extra hate. Like I don't know if like Mikey would recall any stories of people who are like, oh god, that DPS is running X ability,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why they keep pulling the boss by accident because they just don't know that it's a tanking ability,
That's me.
right? So
Because I like running shotgun, but I'm not tank, right?
yeah, you're like, dude, stop running rocket pod. That's why you're ruining the thing and wiping the encounter. So, which caused, by the way, that's caused all kinds of toxicity from both sides of the fence.
Mm-hmm.
People yelling at people when they shouldn't, and then other people doing it intentionally to be jackasses. So that's not a thing anymore. And your Nerval, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that the threat generation is off of like allocation.
Yep, it's tied to your survivability allocation now. Once you go above 50%, you start generating more threat, and it scales up the further down you go.
Nice. That's
You
a
think-
good way to focus it, but using the anima allocation.
Yeah, so the important part is like the reason you don't have to focus so much on like trying to like the current meta is you need to smash the crap out of everything to make sure you keep aggro. Right? Like you sustain so you don't die, but you have to just be constantly DPSing or you lose aggro and something wheels off and shoots a DPS. Whereas this is like Nerval said, is much more. You don't really have to worry about that so much. You're as long as you're touching something, and your signature ability is like a giant AOE, you're gonna grab stuff and keep it. Your goal is staying alive, not so much DPS, which probably should be the goal for a day.
What?
Yes, tanks can be fun to play, but they're a little awkward as well.
Yeah. Well, so as far as like I recall, just so after anima allocation came out, I think, or maybe even before that, I remember kind of when the sustained thing really kicked in, and it honestly came about a bit because of necessity, just because of the way the scaling of the dungeons were. Like in the higher tier dungeons, your healer is not keeping you alive in the current system, anyways. Right? Like.
Yeah, the scaling got it. It became very whack-a-mole, where if you missed one heal or you missed one avoid, you just
died.
over.
Yeah. So healing was something like okay in lower tiers, but once you got into higher tiers, you had to sustain tank because you were either sustain tanking or you were dead. There like the guy would hit you for so much. There's nothing for the healer to heal. You're dead now.
Exactly.
So
It was good up until about Elite 5. After that, it scaled too harshly.
Yeah. So sustain tanking became like a forced meta essentially, out of necessity. And I do recall a stream with Tilty and I want to say it was Mags, right? Mags is a system guy.
Yep.
And I recall him saying specifically in response to that they were aware it was an issue at the time, which, by the way, I think this is like the same year of launch. I'm pretty sure. I think this was like 2017. It's like they're aware of the issue and they just weren't quite sure what to do about it. And he was like, and Mags was like, if anyone has any ideas, like, let me know.
I actually remember that stream, and they were completely correct. We were aware about it at the time, and the solution was, a 7 to 8 month rebalance process, and that's why it wasn't worked on at the time, because it was such a large time investment.
Yeah.
At the time, I believe the focus then was on South Africa.
Yeah, that would have to have been, right? It wasn't out yet. That came out the next year. Which makes sense. I mean, realistically, a lot of people in that time were just hitting like E5, right? And those were the people really pushing. I'm sure most of the player base was nowhere near even E5 at that point. So I imagine it was one of those things like we can deal with it later when it's when we have time and resources and it's a bigger problem. But yeah, I kind of like have that stuck in my brain. That part where Mags is like, eh. Yeah,
What do we do?
really
I
know
don't
what to do
know.
about it either.
So Mags actually deserves a giant shout out because he did a lot of the groundwork for the work that actually went into the rebalance on the design side. He spent a lot of time going over the problems that were at fault there, identifying the issues and what could be done about it. And a lot of what he wrote up in the design was the baseline for when we started on the redesign. And we worked up from there. There were a couple things that we changed a little bit, but a lot of the stuff that he suggested, we started in on and we said, you know what, this is solid design. We're sticking with it.
Yeah, he always seemed like he had a good head on his shoulders. He wasn't on too many streams, but I always enjoyed when he was on there.
Excellent, excellent. So we just went through the beta weekend. How did the beta weekend go?
Somewhere between fantastic and on fire.
Okay.
Uh,
That
there was some
sounds
stuff
about right. That makes sense. Yeah.
there was some stuff that worked out really well, some things that did not work out so well, and one of the new raid mechanics was apparently lag. So that was fun.
Oh, the return of lag.
I was
gonna
gonna
say, that's
say
not a-
that's
not a
not
new
a new
mechanic.
thing.
I think our-
Overall, the general feedback seemed pretty good. We did
Good.
see quite a bit of engagement. We saw a lot of content being done, a lot of dungeons. We did see some pretty good activity in the penthouse, and the penthouse itself looks to be doing fine. I don't have
Okay.
any major concerns there. There were some bugs that some people dragged up, of course, as will always happen in any beta.
Yeah.
Well, of course, yeah.
There are a couple of ability issues that still need to be tackled. Some itemization problems. There's just some things that still need to be done, and also once we exposed it to the general public, some clever people came up with some interactions and combinations that we didn't think of
Mm.
before, and those need to be tackled.
As in, like, in a bad way?
I mean, just stuff that if we didn't tackle it would become a problem. So
Okay.
we need to get it fixed before we release it.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Can you give any specifics? Because now I'm just really curious.
I'd say the best example I actually have is the way that the blade healing works. Specifically, the blade mechanic healing. When you generate chi, if you don't spend that chi after it reaches 5, then you get a percent-based heal over time. And one of the big changes here in the rebalance was shifting tanks from having a lot of healing abilities to having abilities that focus on reducing incoming damage, not on reverting incoming damage.
Okay.
And that was required in order for healers to actually be necessary and useful. Because when you have a tank who specializes in taking less damage, then you're able to have a healer who tops them up. Otherwise, it's a losing battle of attrition. And that was the goal we had here, to make tanks able to last a very, very long time in that battle, but to have the healers come in and bring you back up. And the blade mechanic passive healing poses a problem in there because it is unlike most sources of self-healing right now, it's uncapped. And I do worry that if we leave it as it is, we would see a new meta emerge where you have tanks bringing a blade power ability in order to generate chi and turn that into a large percent-based healing boost and bring a tank offhand for all the defensive cooldowns.
Mm.
I don't know that it would be effective. I don't have any
Hold on,
idea if
taking
anyone would
notes.
actually try it, but it needs to be addressed because it's a possibility and it could be really bad if we don't address it.
Yeah, I see what you. Well, you just end up with a heal tank.
It's more. It's kind of going back to the old sustain tank, but with less about cooldown rotations. Yeah.
I mean, it screams to me like TSW heal tank. Like I don't know if you remember those, but he was
I
usually
do.
something and blood, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I do remember
also,
them.
so you would like use cold blooded both to like heal yourself and generate aggro, and like basically you tanked while healing yourself. Again, you didn't need a healer because you were both.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because this isn't. So this is why one of the reasons I didn't have the biggest problem with the sustain meta is because at the top end, I was like, well, TSW did that too. The difference is the sustain meta in Legends was not just the top end, right? It was a much bigger range. But in TSW, and I think with any game, the further you get into end game, the more people try and eke out like just that bit more performance, right? Like how can we do this content faster, quicker, achieve more damage per second? And the first way you do that is you lose the healer. I mean, that's true of like literally any game. The first way you do that is you either lose the healer or you have a leech healer, because then they're at least doing damage and healing.
And
if
I
you can have a
expect to
heal,
see that kind of behavior happening again. I just expect it to happen under a slightly different set of circumstances.
That
Yeah,
would
I mean,
be really
technically-
nice because I really enjoy being a leech healer.
the AR doesn't leech though, does it? Or that get changed?
AR still does leech. It's
Yeah.
more heavily focused towards healing, but it's still a leech healer. You
I would
still
have sworn the only one that's actually leeching is like a true leech effect is sword.
rifle.
But that's
healing
only to
has
you,
leech
not to
effects.
another target. Is that something that changed in the rebalance that I wasn't paying attention to?
The basic changed.
The basic. Oh, okay. Then yeah, I wasn't healing, so I might not have paid attention to that. I will say currently on live, assault rifle doesn't really leech for another target. I don't think on live. I know it was one of those things where like you can heal, but like in TSW, you could straight up just turn your damage output into heals for another target. Right? Defensive target, punch out a bunch of damage, heal the other person, and that seemed to go away in Legends.
So there were problems with that from a systemic standpoint, in that leech healing in TSW was double dipping on your power, because
Yeah, I think by
it
definition,
scaled off of both attack rating and heal rating when it should have scaled off of either, which is why it became so powerful once
Mhm.
10.9s became available.
Yeah, I can see that. I know it was one of the first things like people that play leech healers noticed when they got into Legends. Like day one was like, wait a minute, I can't leech heal with assault rifle. What the hell?
You can't full damage leech heal. You can still do a fairly decent job with a
Yeah.
hybrid setup.
Yeah, you can heal and you can do damage, but I mean, what I mean is like the actual my damage is turned into healing, which I think I think one of the only things that does that is Blade, that specifically says like X percentage of your damage restores X percentage of your health.
I mean, that's still a mechanic in Rifle. Vital Shot and Unveil Essence still do that. So
Yeah.
that's still there. It's still the flavor of the weapon. But we have to be really careful, or we're going to
Yeah.
wind up in a situation similar to sustain tanking, where everyone who wants to heal has to rifle heal, like back in TSW,
Right.
because you do the extra damage.
No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it should be that way. That's not what I'm saying. I was just saying that like one of the reasons I personally had less of an issue with the sustained meta is because I was like, well, guys, it's not like this didn't happen. It's not like healers were not the first thing kicked out the door in TSW as well. This isn't a new issue. I think the difference is in Legends it happened faster. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do think I see what you're saying.
Like you said, E5, right? E5 or so, and you start to like almost need a sustain meta to go forward. Whereas the shenanigans of TSW didn't happen until you were like over gearing Nightmare. And then at that point, it's like, yeah, well, what else are you gonna do? We're over gearing everything.
When you're overgearing, it's fine for the shenanigans to take over. That's completely acceptable.
Yeah,
It's just when you're doing stuff that's supposed to be a challenge, it
Yeah.
shouldn't be done in this awkward, weird way where you have a tank and no healer, and your tank's job is to do everything, and everyone else's job is to only shoot the boss. That I mean, that might feel good for some people playing the tank. I've played a lot of tanks, and I personally hate that kind of feeling. I know other people who hate that having all that responsibility. It was just going down a very weird path.
Yeah, it's not great, but I will say you can delegate. Like, I don't know. Like, I know tanks that literally did everything in TSW, like E10 dungeons, right? Like everything. They're like cleansing and pairing. Like they're running like what, maybe 2 cooldowns.
Well,
Like
that probably
they're
leads
just
to a lot of burnout for people who do play that a lot. They're like, I don't feel like doing that today. Well, guess we're not
well,
playing.
no. So to be clear, these are the kind of people that need a challenge. So they're doing this
Hmm.
on purpose, right? They're like ratcheting up their gear to the point where they can only run like 2 cooldowns and do everything because it's the only thing that gives it some level of difficulty for them at this point, right? Or challenge. So like they take doing everything as like a if they were just running the dungeon, they'd be bored.
Mhm.
So they're doing everything. Meanwhile, the DPS just run like just shoot everything in like 20 seconds because you don't because you have 4 DPS with nothing better to do, right? Um, whereas me personally, like when I would tank, I'd be like, yo, someone take an impair for this because I'm not doing all that crap. I'm gonna sustain
Someone
tank.
else pick up one for.
I'm gonna sustain tank with 4 cooldowns to make sure I don't fall over dead. Someone needs to cleanse and someone needs to impair. What you people are working for this.
That is the desired outcome.
So now it's just gonna be like someone's impairing, or actually I think probably the tank can take an impair, but I still would say like the healer's cleansing, and DPS needs to like do something. But it's like the responsibilities should be shared, right? Like that's how a team fight like a dungeon should probably work.
Oh yeah, it's team.
So
There's
these changes have been made to all the tank weapons, and you said and all the healing weapons. But can we still use the tank weapons to DPS?
Yes, and because of the change that Jimmy mentioned earlier, where threat generation is no longer tied to the ability but is tied to your anima allocation,
Okay.
those weapons now have access to more abilities to choose from.
Okay. So like almost, I would say that every weapon maybe, because I don't know if that makes sense, but a great majority of weapons can still be used for DPS.
That's the intention. It should be every weapon tree is able to be used for DPS. There are a couple that have some significant problems, and we're looking at the biggest outliers. But the intention is if you pick a weapon as your primary, you can use it to DPS.
Now I would like to get clarification from you on stream for people because even though people talked about it, uh, like on Discord and it was in I think the notes as well, and you talked about it on Discord. It's something that keeps coming up over and over, is that people are like, oh, if I go tank with like full tank glyphs, which you need to do as a tank now, by the way, if that wasn't clear, like you can't just run DPS glyphs. You actually need to run tank glyphs like evade and defense to be a tank. I know that sounds like insanity, but you need to do tank things to be a tank now. People were like screaming bloody murder about being locked into that role and not able to DPS stuff because I'm gonna need a new gear set. I have to grind a whole new gear set. It's gonna take me years. Blah blah blah. So Norvell, care to set them straight?
Sure, for the record, after it's already on the record, they recall the signature abilities that I mentioned earlier. Each of the tanking weapons has a signature ability that interacts with your tanking stats. Well, the damage on that ability scales with both your anima allocation and your tanking stats. So let's say that you're glyphed 2 hit glyphs and the rest are defense and evade. Using that signature ability, you're still able to solo stuff. You're still able to complete Elite 17 DA with time on the clock. You're not going to do as much damage as someone who is purely geared into DPS, but you're still going to do enough damage that you can do all equivalent level solo content.
So to clarify, when you're doing that Dark Guard as a tank in tank glyphs, you allocate to damage, correct? To get
Correct.
the damage.
And tanks actually may have a slightly easier time when soloing because of those glyphs, because you're mitigating so much incoming damage. And
Oh,
Oh,
good.
right.
that's part of the balance. You do a little less damage, but you're way more durable. So you don't have to bring, say, the first passive in your weapon, which provides healing, because you have all of this passive defense. You can bring another passive that increases your damage more instead.
Okay, that would be very nice. I'm the weird one. I usually play this game solo. So I appreciate that you're trying to balance it both ways.
Yeah, so the way to think about it when this does eventually go live is that probably at least initially you're going to need to pick a lane, right? Like, am I a tank or a DPS or a healer?
Or a healer.
And like, and although healer and DPS have most of the same glyphs in common, anyways, to be honest.
There's just
That,
the hit.
that's a healer doesn't need hit, but that's about it. Like, healers can fairly easily swap to DPS, whereas a tank normally was a much bigger issue because your glyphs are all different. But given that tanks can actually output damage with those glyphs due to the signature abilities, it's really just going to be picking a lane, at least initially. Like, you may still want to build up an extra set to just DPS with if you want to, but initially you'll just be like, oh, well, I want a tank, so I'm going to convert all my glyphs to tank glyphs, and I'm going to be tank, right? And then I'm
The
going
idea
to...
is you pick what you want to do. You
Yeah.
say, I want to do this, and then you're able to continue doing all your solo content, and you're able to perform that role in a team.
So there's no downside. You're not like I'm stuck being a tank and now I can't do Dr. Garth, or I can't do scenarios, or I can't do, like, no, you can do everything just in your tank gear.
Exactly. In my mind, that was a requirement as part of the rebalance. We couldn't release the rebalance without it. And a large part of the framework was laid down in anima allocation. And that was one of the original reasons for anima allocation being implemented in the first place, to provide ways for tanks to be able to solo better.
Right.
And I
remember-
liked that.
Yeah, but it's even better now because I think even back then when it first came in, it was like, we can allocate, but now we need extra glyphs, right? Like,
Yeah, it didn't touch the glyphs, and glyphs are a significant portion of your
Yeah.
output at high gears.
yeah, so this is like literally the best of all worlds, where like not only can you allocate to tank freely, but you can also, if you have the glyphs, right, like you can damage that way as well without having to have a whole separate set of gear or separate set of glyphs to swap around. Also, the swap price got lowered drastically.
Yep, that was something that we planned for the rebalance, and it kind of snuck into the anniversary patch. So it's not an accident. Well, it is an
Unintended.
accident.
It's kind of an act.
But it's an intentional accident. It's not going away after the anniversary ends. It's going to be 4K moth to remove to recover, to get the item out, a signet or a glyph on a red item just permanently.
Right,
And
so I think
Is that going to hang around? Is that going to, or is that only like until after the rebalancing calms down?
No, we changed the flat price. It's staying that way.
Okay.
All right.
I think the price before, I want to say, was 20K.
I believe it was either 10,000 or 20,000. It was a ridiculous.
I think it was 20,000 because I paid something like 200K over the course of a couple weeks to swap one way and swap back. It was, yeah, I want to say it was 20K per. So down to 4K per is, yeah, and someone in chat's confirming it was 20K. So down to 4K is a massive, massive decrease. Just for reference, at some point I swapped all of my pistol talismans and signets to Blade, so that I could play Blade at like max IP. But that involved, because I didn't have doubles of everything, that involved ripping out all the glyphs and signets and putting them all in different stuff. So it was 20k, 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 20k. It added up really quickly. And then I had to switch back 2 weeks later because Blade is really horrible in New York Raid. So I did it all over again. I think I ended up spending like 200k in the span of like 2 weeks.
Ouch,
Just
but
swapping.
that's a perfect example of why it's a bad price, because it makes people very scared to experiment with their gear.
To do it in the first place, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have
would
to have a shit
encourage
ton
it.
of marks.
With
Yeah,
with there
4K
being
is
multiple
like-
roles, there needs to be support for actually messing around in those roles. Like, let's say you decide to be a tank, but 2 months down the line you decide you don't actually like tanking, you want to be a healer instead. The easier we make it for you to go to be a healer, the more likely you are to do it, as opposed to being stuck as a role you don't like.
Yes.
And we want you to be happy. We want you to have fun. We don't want to make life horrible.
Well,
Okay,
that's
now I'm
good.
scared.
I
This
appreciate
doesn't sound
that.
right.
I feel like that should be obvious, but sometimes it has to be said.
No, it does. It does.
We want you to
No, I feel
actually
like it-
enjoy the game.
Yeah,
We
this is a
want
trap.
you to have fun
We want
and
you to
not
have
just take this
fun.
as your job.
Yeah.
It's a trap.
Well, then why am I working 9 to 5? What's going on here?
Did your job tell you it was a video game and you should have fun with it? No.
I mean, technically, yes.
Well, for you, it's your job.
Okay, depending on your job, to be fair.
Right, yeah. Unless you're playing Job Simulator or something, but
Is that what you're doing?
Too
Are you playing
real.
Job Simulator?
Job Simulator. Well, didn't was it someone brought up before? Someone once it just told me a quick figure, and it blew my mind for a second that it was, the average, not the average. A year is 52 weeks, and a 40-hour work week is considered a full-time job. So just easy math, 50 times 40 is 2,000. So 2,000 hours at any one thing is a full-time job for 1 year. Is the equivalent. And so when you look at like, oh, how long have I played this game for? Oh, okay. It's about, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
I think
So
Funcom
what-
owes me about 5 years of back pay for the time I spent working on Anarchy Online in that case.
Wait, well, what does my 12,000 hours translate to again?
About 6 working years.
But, wait. Okay, well, I've been playing since 2014, so that sounds right.
That's about right.
math checks out.
That checks out.
Wait. Do I beat you on one thing? Because I think I was playing in 2013.
Oh,
That is
plenty
the
of people. I didn't know the game
Yes,
existed.
yeah.
That is the only thing I will ever possibly beat you on if I'm right in my remembering, which might be wrong.
No, yeah.
No,
Jimmy
what-
is fully said that he actually started almost at well after release.
Oh yeah, no, 2014, like the release in 2012, way
Yeah.
after release.
Well,
I
and
think-
13 is also after release, to be fair. Just
Yeah, and
Oh,
there's
oh,
people that
oh,
were like in the
Lord.
beta before it, but in my defense, I didn't know it existed.
oh,
Also,
that is a better defense than me because I knew it existed, but I put it off.
Shame.
I owned
Shame.
it at launch, but I didn't get
That-
to it
that-
until
what?
like a year later.
hold on a second. Wait. You owned it at launch. But
Yup.
It took you a year to get around to it.
Yep, because somebody gifted me. Oh, what was the? Now I can't think of it. What was the other game that came out at the same time?
Build Wars 2.
Yes,
Okay.
somebody gifted me that, so I felt like I should play that first. So I played that, and I will regret it for forever.
for the rest of your life. Oh man, if only I hadn't
I
played
made the
Guild
wrong
Wars 2.
decision.
I kind of put that out of my head. Like I was like Guild Wars 2. I was like Guild Wars 2? No, this game must be much older than. Oh, maybe not. Yeah.
No, it was the exact same time, and I got the
Wow.
There was something.
I
There was
I
another game
bought
too, right? Like it was
I
a really
bought
bad
this
launch
one. Yeah, I
space.
bought this one, and then I got the other one as a gift, and I'm like, oh, I should play the one that was gifted. So
I think you're thinking
Yeah.
of WildStar, Jimmy.
Is that the other one that came out at the same time?
Close.
I just know like there was 2 or 3 games that came out like pretty much in the same like month or 2 period, and it was a rough. I think it was a rough launch, at least partially because of that. There's a lot of
Yeah.
competition.
Yeah, there was.
But I will say, I don't know, and I mean, Nervel is in no way responsible for this, but I don't know who the hell was in charge of marketing for Legends, or not Legends, but The Secret World. Because, like, I literally passed on it on a Steam sale and then bought it, like, the next day on a Steam sale. Because the first day I saw it on a Steam summer sale in 2014, it had a goddamn picture of a Deep One just by itself. Nothing else. Looked like some weird creature from the Black Lagoon. There was nothing enticing about it at all. I was like, what the hell is that shit? I don't want to play that. Whatever, click next. and then like the next day, I see this game that's got like this fan of like comic book covers, right? Secret World, like all these different things that are true or whatever. I click on that, I'm like, hell yeah, click buy right now. Now, who the hell thought the creature from the Black Lagoon by itself was somehow a good marketing ad is what I want to know. And has that guy been fired?
Can't really speak to that. Sorry, it's not.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, fair enough.
maybe it's like when you go on Netflix and they showed like the little icon for whatever
And it just
whatever you want you to
changes
watch
randomly?
changes all the time dramatically based on your previous. Yeah.
And sometimes it has not like almost nothing to do with the movie or show.
Right.
It's like the one actor that has like a 2-second part and there's somehow the thumbnail. And you're like, wait a minute. I know that character's in like that actor's in that show for literally like a death scene. Why are they on the thumbnail?
I just got a
Yeah.
question from a Larry in game saying, with all these changes to skills, with all these changes to the skills themselves, any thought of adding another another skill bar, or not a skill bar, but adding another slot for the skill, like active skills?
That's a common question that comes up. Not at this time. The systems are balanced around the limited number of buttons that you have, and it always assumes that your gadget is your utility button, and your other abilities work together. And if we add another skill slot, then we start running into problems where things synergize, and we have situations where things scale in ways that were unexpected, and we start having problems keeping everything in check and balanced. So for the time being, no, we intend to keep it 6 skill buttons.
Okay.
We saw that Ox gadget in beta. What's up? That's what someone said in chat.
I'm
Also,
not actually sure what that is. I don't entirely know where that's from. I assume it was something that someone made way years back, and it just got put in the vendor by accident.
so Chicken Stew said in the chat, "This game looks stupid." Jimmy during a Steam sale. Next day, this game's cool. The next day, a screenshot. That is exactly what happened.
It's,
Also, Joe Bilo still around somewhere at Funcom. I think believe that
Yeah.
that is yes.
Yeah, he is the design and creative lead, I believe. I can't remember his exact title, but he's basically the guy in charge of all the designers now.
Yeah, he's. I think if I'm not mistaken, it's like almost like every new project he kind of jumps to and has been like designing on for a while. It seemed like.
He's been involved in pretty much everything, yeah.
Yeah, because he did that with Conan Exiles, and whatever new project he's on now.
Lego for a little bit.
Well, he was on TSW or no Secret World.
He was
Yeah,
on Secret World, but wasn't he involved in the Lego thing before it went under?
Presumably, I don't remember. So
I want to say he talked about it.
I
I'm
think
pretty
so.
sure he was involved in the Lego stuff too.
Well, you can't all have hits every single time.
I didn't mean that as a negative. I just meant that, like he tends to get tapped to do stuff. It seems like from the design perspective.
Yeah, well, like I said, he's in a company-wide lead position now. I'd equate him to. This isn't actual terminology, but I'd say he's like VP of design at this point. He's up there at high level.
Nice.
And like as a Funcom geek, that's a fun conversation to have, but like Nerval probably can't answer questions about somebody else in the company.
Why not? Let's dish.
That's right. How much is this person a
Because
jerk?
working at the company.
So what's the water cooler talk about?
Who microwaves fish?
Yeah,
Well,
we already
we
know that one.
Yeah, we don't know.
Some of us already
You're the
know
only
who
person
does
who
that.
fish. Everyone else has learned from that one person.
Wait.
Legend has spread.
I literally can't believe, by the way, that we have gone like the whole stream. I think. Have we gone the whole stream without anyone pulling out the new bike?
Oh no, there's been a couple people around.
Where's my bike at?
Oh, honestly, I missed yesterday, so I don't even have the bike yet.
You son of a.
I know.
Here, I got it.
Yeah, you're right.
There you go.
Vroom, vroom. If you
Sorry,
look
I think
closely,
you mean bzz, bzz.
Yeah.
listen.
Yeah.
My bees sound different, okay?
They're
Alright,
high
if you look-
octane bees. Got it.
I was like, wait.
If you
There's
look,
that.
there's bees coming out of the exhaust.
There's bees coming out of the exhaust. Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
that's amazing.
I also like the bee like pattern, like the hex pattern on the front,
On a fuel tank, yeah.
the fuel tank, yeah. But yeah, the bees coming out of the back are pretty sick.
So focusing back on the beta for a second, the beta seems mostly focused on sort of a late game play or elite level play, and multiplayer dungeons and raids. But say, what sort of effect would it have on a starting player who maybe hasn't even reached up to anima allocation yet?
Yeah.
Can you clarify that by animation? Do you mean level 50?
Level 20 is when anima allocation kicks in.
Is that when it is? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really early. So the leveling experience up to level 50 has not changed.
Okay.
Dungeons are still designed and balanced for 3 players of appropriate gear. You can run through with 3 DPS players in green gear. Honestly, you could run through with 3 DPS players probably in no gear if you understand the fight mechanics.
Okay.
Or one
have
DPS
fun.
player in no gear.
Or Jimmy.
Thanks, Jimmy. I'm not recommending this for the record. I don't
IP,
think it's a good
man.
idea, but they're balanced in such a way that you could probably still win. Because the point of the
No, I
story
did.
mode is the story. And what we've been working on really kind of kicks in once you actually once you hit level 50 and you start doing that first tier of dungeons. That's when we expect these changes to start being more apparent to the new player.
Okay.
And to a new player, it shouldn't be too strange, honestly. We expect most new players coming in to have a little bit of experience with the concept of the Trinity and the roles, particularly because the activity finder asks you to select a role. It makes it fairly obvious it expects you to do that role. And if you look at the abilities, it should be pretty obvious to say, well, this ability heals my target. As a healer, I should probably use that.
Yeah,
So-
I would agree. I just thought of something though, like once this goes live, I could actually make a new character and try and run through the whole game level 20 plus as just a tank, right? Theoretically.
As a
You-
pure tank.
You could do that. It'd be a little painful to do because you wouldn't get the glyphs until later on, and you would not see much increase until you got your glyphs.
Oh right, I would need glyphs first. I would need blue gear. Well, yeah, but you can get blue. You can just slap on blue gear, right? You can slap on blue gear at like level 4. It doesn't care. I don't know if you
I'm
can put a
thinking of
glyph in
cash
it then,
talismans.
but
Yeah, you could. You
sure.
probably could. I mean, if you want to try it, I wouldn't really
I-
recommend it. When
I
leveling
need
up, the
things to do,
expectation is
Norel.
still that you're going to be 90-10 attack survival, and you're still
Yeah.
going to be using stuff that does damage. The expectation is that
Right.
you're not going to go complete tank. I mean, if you do go complete tank, you'll still be able
Never
to
go
finish the
full
story.
tank.
You'll still be able to do it
Yeah.
because of the way that the solo content has been balanced.
God,
But
I am
it's-
so glad, by the way, I did the pacifist playthrough character before this rebalance. I don't think that would work anymore.
Your
like it.
character that basically didn't hit anything, that it would just
Yeah.
worked off of reflect shields and summons.
Beautiful. Yeah, I like which the biggest block too was Akhenaten because he hits an HP threshold and stops attacking you and enrages, and you only have so much time to kill him. As a reflect character, a character that's an NPC that stops attacking you and then gives you a timer to kill him with is not helpful. That was horrible. That took forever. It took so many hours to get that RNG down to get past him.
That's actually a fun question. When Jimmy did his one IP character and just basically completed the entire game with a max IP of 1, did the developers just turn around to that and just slap their foreheads and just be like, what is this? Like how did this happen?
Not really. I'm gonna do something risky here, and I'm gonna compare it to Dark Souls. People
Okay.
in Dark Souls using the crummiest weapon, the weapon you start with, no armor. People do these absurd feats because they can, because they want to do something unique. And when you look at the combat systems, Secret World's combat system is designed with a lot of principles that Dark Souls shares. You can avoid a lot of damage by rolling, by dodging. You can avoid a lot of damage through clever positioning, through exploitation of the AI's quirks. There's a lot you can do, and I'd say they aren't that different in that aspect. So if you want to spend the time doing that, by all means, go for it. It's your time. If you have fun doing it, then do it. I don't see that as something for everyone. I'm just glad that someone got some enjoyment out of it.
Okay.
I will say that right now is a really good time if anyone wants to do that, because the trick there is to just have a shit ton of capstones. Like passives and capstones. Right? Like you don't have talismans, so you have no attack rating from anywhere else. So you want all the passives and all the capstones you can get. And the anniversary gives you a shit ton of XP. That's how 1IP Man was possible, by the way. 1IP Man was me running like the hourly anniversary stuff, like non-stop for like the length of the anniversary to just beef him up stat-wise, like without having gear. Yeah.
But in other words, basically working as intended.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say as intended, but it's
I think I'm gonna be on. Like, okay, so by the way, the whole reason for 1IP Man, honestly, was to hit it. Will like, and this is gonna probably sound even dumber, but the whole reason was to be able to do Tank Commander at 1IP. That was the whole goal. Like, so it's
I
not like
appreciate that goal.
it's not like he just did the story, right?
Mhm.
Like he 100% of the game at like 0 IP, because you gain 1 IP going through the tutorial in the beginning, so your max IP is 1. But legitimately, he had 0 IP like the whole playthrough, and he had 100% everything, and then get lucky enough to get a random drop of the stupid puzzle box to unlock the mission in the first place. because his whole goal was to do tank commanding, which actually turned out to be difficult because, as Norvell, like we talked about it after the fact that I think it's some of his hits to have like a minimum. Like he scales to your IP, but he has a minimum.
Yes, there's a minimum IP he scales to.
Yeah, it's
I
not
don't
one.
remember the exact.
It's not one,
It's
right?
not one.
It's not one.
That fight was like difficult because I was like, holy crap, he's hitting so hard, and I could tell because like the other things that were scaled before him, right, like were vastly different, and when I got to him, I was like, Jesus. So yeah, he while he does scale your item power, he does have like a minimum. So I was kind of punching up, fighting him with one IP man. Um, Now, I can tell you that what Squirrelpool wanted me to do was to enter the instance at 1 IP and just put on gear and just beat the shit out of him.
Just for revenge, really. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he wanted, but I couldn't bring myself to get rid of the hundreds of hours of work to get him there to like dash his IP at that point. I couldn't do it.
Well, also depending on whether or not you, what did you do that before the item was added that lets you select the difficulty?
Yes.
Then yeah, it wouldn't have worked anyway. It scales off your max IP. Well, it's scaled off your max IP.
But is it offered max IP when you enter or max IP just at all times?
I don't remember.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's what I wasn't sure of
on it.
either. Like, because Squirrelpool's idea was enter the instance at 1 IP, right? Presumably the scaling, is set then, and then put on all your gear and fight him and just kick the shit out of him. Like that was his idea. I didn't want to ruin all that work to do the whole game at that low IP and then screw it up.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah, sorry. That was,
sorry.
but the point is the rebalance is going to bring other things to do.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like there'll be stuff theoretically.
Well, part of it is we're gonna have the penthouse, as a dungeon, which just leads into a question that came from our community, and that is, and I think I had this right, from All-Azure, I think that's how you pronounce it, from our community, says from a dev perspective, what are the challenges involved in taking content in TSW, like the new Penthouse Dungeon? Well, that's also an SWL, but and making them available in SWL in a meaningful way. So sort of like we see content coming out that we recognize, but what are the challenges involved in kind of making those dungeons into replayable again in Secret World Legends?
So there's, I would describe it as there being two levels of difficulty there. The first level is simply the act of taking the existing content and updating it to work in the new systems. This is something like, so this is the process of updating the stats, going through all of the abilities on the bosses, making sure they do appropriate damage, making sure they interact properly with the current gadgets, making sure that the expectations are reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Something that would not be reasonable is if every time Uda attacks it bleeds you and you have to cleanse constantly. That would not be reasonable. And it's a process of going through every single encounter in whatever we convert or bring over and making sure it works that way, making sure the mechanics still make sense. There's also a lot of stuff that has to be changed for the reticle. Any attackable objects have to be typically adjusted significantly. Its missions tend to need to be updated. Anything that uses SMSs has some back-end changes that has to go into it as well. There's a lot of things that have to be updated in the background, and it's a lot of stuff that is not immediately visible, but it still has to happen. If it doesn't, it's really obvious because something's broken.
So, for example, part of the update for the new penthouse dungeon was also a big thing was removing Aegis.
So that's the other layer of difficulty.
Yeah.
Aegis is a layer unto itself, and that is because it was integrated into specific mechanics. The perfect example in the penthouse dungeon, and I'm going to stop for a moment. There are mechanical spoilers coming up. If you don't
Oh.
want to hear mechanical spoilers about the penthouse dungeon, then you should probably mute for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes.
Earmuffs.
Fantastic. Okay, so
Okay.
the penthouse dungeon has been out in TSW for a long time, and most of the mechanics are known to people. The second fight with the Bird of the 0 Point Pathogen, more commonly known as Flappy, has 2 mechanics that are Aegis specific. Correction, that were Aegis specific. There
Okay.
was the Corrupt Dot, where it put a debuff on 1 or 2 people in the group, and it dealt damage to that person's Aegis shield. And if their shield reached 0, then everyone in the group died. It was a healer check. Pretty easy to understand. The other one was that the Flappy would periodically create these giant colorful rings. And if you had the wrong Aegis shield in the ring, then you took a huge amount of damage and, let's be honest, probably died. Both of those mechanics had to be adjusted, or in the case of the rings, completely replaced when converted over to Secret World. And there's a reasonable amount of design work, but a lot of implementation work, because mechanics like this are often integrated very tightly into the scripting of an encounter. And changing it or replacing it or removing it often has giant repercussions elsewhere in the flow of the encounter or the timing or the scripting of it that just aren't immediately visible at first glance. For example, the Corrupt ability was changed so that it doesn't care about Aegis anymore and just does damage directly to the player's health. But because of the way that damage was changed on the boss, the Corrupt ability ended up being too difficult for healers to deal with and cast on 3 players, which was not that big a problem back in TSW. So
Right.
changes had to be made there as well. And it's not a change that you can identify on a numerical basis. It's a change you have to identify by play testing it and actually watching it being done and using players who are more skilled than yourself to tackle it and see where things break down and fall apart. Giant rant over.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
The rings is like the biggest visible one. The healer, there's the healer check for sure. I mean, I remember first testing that. I was like, yeah, this is it's a massive healer check. But the rings is probably the biggest one noticeable to the entire party, where you're like, what the hell do we do now?
That one got redesigned completely.
Yeah. Is it, by the way, just out of curiosity, is it still just 2 rings?
There's not been another effect pass on there yet. So
Okay.
yes.
Does it like just to everyone else that's hasn't heard about this before? So there's 3 spaces. There's melee, mid, and long. But essentially the way it's currently working is there's the melee circle and the mid circle, and the long is anything after the mid circle, right? But it doesn't have a back end ring. So if you're standing in long, kind of doesn't currently feel like you're standing in a circle. Does that make sense? It doesn't feel like you're standing in a ring because it's not defined. There's no back end. You feel like
Okay.
you're standing outside of a ring. So the very first time we ran into this, testing it, we died. Because, and this is kind of funny, but so it just so happened, coincidentally, that a filth circle dropped like dead center from the bird. So it looked like that was maybe the melee ring.
Mm.
And then there was the actual melee ring and the mid ring. So we saw 3 visible circles and didn't realize that the outside of the mid range ring is the long range. And so there was no one in the long range, right? Because we thought mid was long. So we went filth circle, melee circle, mid. And we're like, oh, we're good. Die. we figured it out, but it was. I think. Go ahead.
In my defense, betas exist for precisely this reason.
That's right.
Yeah. No. I'm not. That's not an attack on you. But I'm just pointing out that like the difference is it literally could have been the same in TSW. I actually don't remember. The difference was it would have had colors on the ground, right? So you would have just seen a long stretch of whatever color. So visually, it just was sort of, and especially because of that filth circle, that really threw us, because we saw like triple rings, and we're like, okay, we're good. So yeah, I don't know, just one of those interesting things when you're playtesting that kind of stuff and go like, wait, why did that just happen? I thought we had everyone in all the spots. By the way, super stoked that Penthouse Dungeon is back.
It's worth noting also for those who are afraid of bunnies that the Penthouse Dungeon can only be rolled on Elite 11 and higher. That is because of the very high skill requirements that some of its fights have.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand that. Like, as much as some people I think might want to try it that are in lower elites, like the amount of group coordination that especially the bunny fight requires, you really do want to up. You want people to probably have a pretty significant amount of group experience at like difficult content before tackling that, or it's just a recipe for people just getting pissed off.
Exactly.
Frankly, at high levels, it's a recipe for people getting pissed off.
Be like, it might piss people off either way, but
Well, at the high levels, you're used to it.
yes,
right?
at least you're fair at that
really
point,
is different. At the high levels, you expect it. If you're okay with it, you have chosen this path, right? You knew what you were getting into when you signed up for this crap.
So, when is this balance pass? When are we going to expect it to go live?
Did we already ask this?
We did, but it was before the show.
Oh, okay, sorry. My bad.
So we don't have a
blurs.
date yet because we don't know.
Okay.
We're still working on it. When it goes live is really going to depend on how the next beta turns out.
Okay.
Next
That's
beta,
about
you
all
say?
I can say. Yes, there will be another beta phase.
Another public beta phase? Wait, what did you say yes or no?
I said yes.
Okay, sorry. Like, other people might have heard you. I literally couldn't. So another public beta phase confirmed? Or we just don't know when yet?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
why
you
not?
know, for people that are listening or watching or what have you, go,
Say it louder
okay,
for
yeah,
the people in the back.
yeah. So
I would say that at no point did I say that we were only doing one beta phase. I think I actually said in the announcement post that we'd probably have multiple. But yeah, we're definitely having another.
good to know. Good to know. Looking forward to it.
Which makes sense. We're actually fighting a Hatekeeper right now. There's a Hatekeeper raid going on.
Oh,
Mine just
okay, that explains a little bit about the quiet.
A little bit, yeah.
Is yours having a different one than you?
Probably.
Mine's dead.
Ours is getting there. It's getting there.
Okay.
Because
There's a
the
lot.
anniversary event is still going on.
I'm gonna say there's a lot of people in mine. And it looks like on the stream there's a lot of people in yours too. That's a good turnout. Let's see if I can hop into yours and help.
It's almost done.
That's it, but yes. But the anniversary event is still going on. The anniversary event continues until the. Oh, I don't have this off the top of my head. When does the anniversary event last until?
Who are you asking that
Excellent
to?
question.
Anybody who knows. No, I got this. It ends on the 16th. It ends on July 16th. And you can get a whole bunch of stuff, of course, for logging in. Whole bunch of fun stuff, including a mount. Well, I think it might be a little too late for the mount at this point if you're just logging in now, but
But you can still get the glyph exchanger.
you can still get the glyph exchanger. That's very early on. And so how have you enjoyed the anniversary from your perspective, Nervel? Like, have you seen like a really good turnout for the anniversary? Have you seen the numbers that you would like to see from the anniversary, I guess?
So I've actually been really hands off for the anniversary this year because of the rebalance changes. I've been focused entirely on them. I just haven't had time to focus on the anniversary. Andy, Autumn Terra, has been handling the anniversary, and I think he's been doing a good job of it.
Okay. Andy, do we know him? Andy?
Name sounds familiar.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Throw him under the bus like that.
Any guy loves to fish a little too much.
No, we love Andy. Andy's amazing. He's an amazing community manager. Specifically, he gave us a whole bunch of stuff to give away on the last show that we had, and that was amazing of him. Of course, we joke, of course. So that's the anniversary. But how have you enjoyed the Megaversary? The Megaversary being a primarily community-run event that kind of goes alongside of the anniversary. When you first started doing anniversaries, because you came on almost right before the first anniversary of Secret World Legends, were you kind of surprised at the community's, what's a good way to put this?
Initiative?
Yeah, just getting together and making this whole event on top of the event.
So I spend a lot of time working on the game in TSW, and it wasn't called Megaversary back then, but the spirit was there, and it grew in the years in TSW, and I was more pleased than anything to see that continue with Legends. Community's always added an extra layer on top of anything we do, doing things that we don't have the time for or we would never think of. You guys have come up with some really creative things. I love the bike races. I think that's a fantastic thing to do.
The bike race is really fun.
And it's stuff that we wouldn't think of. If we tried to think of a bike race, we come up with something completely different, something probably a little absurd and probably really dumb. And I'm glad that you guys are doing it. I'm glad that it's being done, that this is happening, that you're so invested in the community that you put in the time doing all of this. It is fantastic.
Yeah, I come up with the dumb stuff. Other people come up with it. I came up with the Kill Me event.
Or your Christmas in July.
Yeah, Christmas
giving away
July
all the icy claws.
Christmas in July has existed since TSW, by the way.
It has, yep.
Yeah, I used to farm icy claws in TSW as well. I just have a farming problem. I have a problem, guys. I have a problem.
Well, the first step is to actually come out and say you have a problem. To accept it.
I legit have a farming problem. I've been farming icy claws. I farmed icy claws for like 2 years in TSW, and now 3 in Legends.
And I'm going to point out that in some cases your farming problem is a literal problem with farming.
Yes, I've also farmed corn for 2 hours straight for literally no reason. Because I kept resetting the side mission to enable farming. So at the end of 2 hours, I had completed 1 side mission.
Someone in our Twitch chat said, "You're a dragon with a horde of icy claws."
I would be if I didn't give them away all the time. Oh my god. How did I get knocked off my bike? Nervel? Is that you? I, either it was you or the bee pinata works a lot different than I thought it did. I'm gonna say that's you. Yes. You can't knock me off this branch.
It's magic.
I mean, I say that, but you probably could. Yeah, I knew it. You had to prove me wrong. That was funny.
Speaking of the bike races, though, we do want to point out that there is actually, although the Megaversary said that it did end on Tuesday, Tuesday, July 7th, there is actually going to be another bike race going on this. Let me bring up the post. Another bike race going on Saturday, July 11th, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I just want to point this out there for anybody coming to play on this Saturday. It is another bike race. As per request and popular demand, I didn't read this through. I should have read this through. We are cray-cray to announce the end of the Megaversary 3 Wacky Bee Stop That Tentacle bike race. This will effectively be a fancy dress race up to Sprint 6 with any mount allowed. If you can follow the route below that's on the post on the forums, I'll go ahead and post that into our Twitch chat. If you can follow the route below, since we'll be videoing as much as we can, there will be no prizes for any first past the post. It's just a chance to celebrate and go a little bit crazy in Secret World. Just, I guess, a blow off of steam, if you will. A prize of the 3 Filth Wolf Moon t-shirt will go to 4 of the most ridiculous, striking, out of this age dressers. What? They're giving away our shirt now? If you can show up beforehand... What are they doing? About 15 minutes before half past the hour, we can take screenshots and decide on the winners. Results will be posted on Twitter via Megaversary3 hashtag and on the thread on the forums. So if you want, join them this Saturday for a bike race of just interesting.
It's a contest bike race, basically.
It's a costume contest bike race. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
It's a parade, right? It's a parade.
I say, well, they say speed 6, but really, it should be done at
walking speed.
Sprint 1.
The reason they say that is the actual bike races have a limit of Sprint 4.
Right,
It's
yeah.
What they're saying is there's no limit because it's not a real race. And I'm saying if it's a bike race that's not actually competitive and it is a costume contest, isn't it essentially a parade?
It is.
Sounds like a fun
Right.
parade.
Yeah, right?
Mm-hmm.
A Halloween parade in July, if you will.
So yeah, that thing seems like it'd be a pretty cool wrap up. I'm excited to see that. I will say I've covered both bike races, even though the last one I covered I literally covered just the race. I started up my stream, covered the race, and I gotta go.
Peace out.
But both of them are really fun to cover, and I really love when everyone's lined up at the starting line, and you turn your sound effects up. It's just it's there's 20 bikes just it's pretty great. And inevitably someone hits a corner and loses sprint. I always feel bad for them, but if anyone that plays the game knows that you'll hit a corner of a doorway or something, right? And your sprint drops. So that happens in the race, you're basically out of the race. It's like you got a flat tire, right? Because your bike just goes away. You some of those turns, you round a corner, your bike's gone. Damn it.
How did that happen? Disappeared into the ether.
Yeah. I mean, it's a cleaner bike crash. No one's getting hit with the bikes.
Right.
So there's that.
A couple more questions for you, Nervel. One, we had these names. Aceo Clearatin. Sure. Okay. Also asked, are you considering? And this is just random. This is about any real topic in Secret World. Is there the possibility of making Steam DLC packs to the ability to rebuy those for multiple characters, like the ones that you buy and you can only get stuff for one character? The possibility to rebuy those.
I do not know. That's a good question, and something that should be taken up with project manager. So I'll forward that on when I talk to him tomorrow.
Okay.
Actually,
And
I have one as well. I have forwarding questions.
okay, go for it.
Freemason boosters have been around pretty long time now. Any ETA on when we expect to see them in the hex coin vendor?
I do not know.
And if you don't know what that means, I can elaborate.
Oh, I know exactly what that means.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. Usually we decide this when we make the booster,
Mhm.
and I can't remember. I'll have to talk with Yakutism about that.
Oh, you mean like the time range?
Yeah, usually we usually that's not correct. It is very piecemeal. We intend to put it somewhere after a specific amount of time or when a specific event happens, and we get a task for it and we keep track of it. And I don't know whether it was missed this time or we just haven't reached that time frame yet. So I just need to
Gotcha.
follow up on that.
So you may just have not have reached like the critical mass to be like, okay, like now it goes on the vendor or something.
It's possible. Like I said, I cannot
Yeah.
recall. It needs to be followed up on.
All right, just curious, because it is one of those things where like some of us that are collectors have been like, well, the whole reason like the hex coin vendor like exists, right, is you have somewhere to put your duplicates. Like you sell them for those coins, and then you can buy a bag for a ton of coins.
A secondary currency, yeah.
That'll guaranteed give you like an agent you didn't have. So the idea is that if RNG completely screws you and you buy a ton of boosters and you get nothing but duplicates, at the very minimum, you eventually can turn that into one that you didn't have, right? But currently, the Freemason one isn't on that list. So no matter how many boosters I buy, if I don't randomly get the one I need, I'm accruing currency like crazy, but have nothing to spend it on, essentially. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I'm very familiar with it. I'm trying to remember what we decided, and I just can't right now. I'm sorry. Like I said, I'll follow up on it.
Yeah, I just wanted to like, I didn't really expect it like an answer. It was more of like a poke, like, hey.
I was gonna say that was more of a suggestion than it was a
It was
a
it's
question.
like I'm sure there's a reason. Like either it's not there yet or someone forgot. I'm sure there's a reason. I just wanted to like bring it up because it's, you know, it's been going on for a while. I try to remember. Freemasons was like, when did they come out? When did the Freemason boosters come out? Was it this year or last year? I've lost all concept of time. Just
I do not know.
Chat
Sure, yeah,
saying
people would
last
know.
anniversary. Thanks.
Someone says last anniversary, I think. Was it? I don't think it was tied to an anniversary. Bomber says last year, because I thought it was like in like February or something. I could be wrong. Bomber says last year. Yeah. So last year sometime. It's been a while. It's been a while.
So just going over in general, again, Nervel, absolutely thank you for coming on the show and talking about the updates that are coming up. But I was just going over what what has actually come out since you have taken over as lead designer, and like I'm just gonna list a couple off the top of my head here. Um, the faction missions, and the South Africa mission, the occult defense scenario, and the Envoys of Avalon event, bringing back the broadcast, Dark Agartha coming out, the investigation with the winter event going along with that, of course making occult defense 5-player, the Rosenbrawl, and everything that came on that April Fool's Day post or
April Fool's
patch.
patch that was actually a patch and
That was
surprised
amazing, by the way.
Yeah, that was pretty
If we hadn't told you before, that was amazing, by the way.
It started as a joke in the office, just saying, haha, it'd be great if we patched it April 1st, and then I started working on it, and they said, okay, we'll do it, I guess.
Yeah, I guess we'll put in a full patch. Yeah, bringing in the Rosenbrawl, the Tank Commander, then right, bring in then the 4-pip talismans, coming in with more Dark Agartha improvements, the Valentine's investigation, and bringing Rosenbrawl to sort of the masses. And so you've done quite a bit for Secret World, and we kind of already know the answer to the question I'm going to ask you, but just to get this on our record, what do you think are any future plans for Secret World?
Right now, we're focused entirely on the rebalance, so we don't actually have anything concrete laid down in terms of plans.
Okay.
We have a very long list of things that we want to do, things that we think would be beneficial for the game, but right now it's all about getting that rebalance solid and out the door. After that's done, then we'll take some time to watch how it does on live, address issues that come up, make sure everything is running smoothly, and then we'll look at what's going to come next.
Awesome.
Oh, I think one of the things we were going to talk about, which we haven't really touched on, is so how's the development process been with the whole, pandemic situation?
Oh yeah.
Has that affected you? Not affected you?
That's right.
I mean, yes, it has definitely affected us. I spend a lot more time working without pants than I used to. Full disclaimer, I'm talking about wearing pajama bottoms instead.
Hey, we're not.
I don't
more
judge.
comfy.
Yeah, we don't judge
Take your
here.
word for it, I suppose.
So the biggest thing that it's impacted has been communication. It's not impacted so much the actual workflow, because we are a digital company, because the people who work here are tech savvy. Working from home instead of working physically in the office was not that much of a transition. We did have teething problems, as would be expected, but those got sorted out fairly quickly, and we've been working remotely fairly easily. It is worth noting that the live team is supported by people from the Oslo office, so we're already used to working with people
Remotely.
who are literally across the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the main thing that we've had to get used to is working with each other, not in the same room, and that has not been that difficult a change. The biggest difficulty there has actually been just talking design, from my perspective anyway.
Okay.
Talking design. I'm sure with art they've had to adjust with actually discussing, how they're actually going to present things, looking at concept, all of that, because that is a little easier to do in person when you can both look at the same physical object. But they've been working just fine from what I can tell. The design side has been chugging along. We have a tendency to silo our tasks out. So, for instance, I referenced Yakatisma, one of our system designers, earlier. He tends to have ownership on the agent network. So when an agent network task comes in, if anything needs to be discussed about it, we discuss it, and then he takes over and he makes sure that task gets done. He makes sure it gets tested and that it's good, and he handles that himself. And that's how we work when we're in the office. That's how we work when we're not in the office. The main change there has been how we communicate before we actually start working.
Okay.
So TLDR version, it's affected how we talk to each other, and otherwise we're pretty much fine.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Just a side note, I did look it up, and the person in chat was right. Last anniversary was when the Freemasons came out. That came out with the anniversary. So it is the 1-year anniversary of the Freemasons booster packs. And they're still not in the damn hex coin vendor. Okay, done. Just wanna.
Just want to point that out. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I was trying really hard to come up with a good pun for that, and just couldn't come up with anything.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No,
Yeah,
that's good to hear. That's good to hear that you're getting along, in these times.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yes.
Hey, because I know it's getting late. Do we want to run a raffle?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go ahead.
And,
As Jimmy said, you're giving away what now?
it's already forgotten. Emote evil laugh.
Yeah.
So if anyone would like to enter the raffle for the emote for the evil laugh,
And that's going to go right now.
Starting giveaway.
Is this the point where I threaten to fill Jimmy's inventory with tacos?
yeah, probably.
If you can find space.
There's always space for a taco.
I mean, actually, I'm probably doing better than Bomber right now. Like, I'm not even joking. I have 7 free spaces. I guarantee you I have more free space than Bomber right now.
So 700 tacos, got it.
And go.
Yes, Bomber has 3 spaces. I have 7. Haha. And now my inventory can fill with tacos.
Oh, that's right. This is Ember's fun giveaway.
Yeah, I like this one. We did this last time. Cool. There's 9 viewers have joined, so get in there, guys. You have 74 seconds or 70 seconds. Same stream delay.
It is a stream delay.
60 seconds.
The Ember sees who wins a lot faster than we do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm about 10 seconds ahead.
So yeah. I'm trying to think. Are we missing anything like beta wise?
I don't think so. Did you have any, I guess, fun experiences? Fun is a relative term in this case. But did you have any standouts from the beta? That any stories, just fun stories you would like to share?
I think so. This isn't so much a fun story as kind of a fun anecdote about how Chaos Magic wound up in the state that it is now in the beta.
Okay. What state is that?
It's an evade tank, kind of hailing back to its roots. But if you haven't read the full patch notes, then you probably, or maybe, are not aware that Chaos has undergone some significant changes that affect the entirety of the weapon, not just tank. So, for starters, Enigmas are gone. When you reach 8 paradoxes, you get Valve, so you get singularities. Which, hey, it's a quality of life thing for a lot of people. But the other thing about it is, during one of the first beta phases, back when Enigmas were still a thing, there was a passive in Chaos called Aegis of Parallelism. And if you've ever looked at or played a monk tank in WoW, it's very similar to that stagger mechanic. And
Okay.
so what it does is when you take damage, a portion of that damage is delayed and instead you take it over time. Well, it pairs very well with an evade tank because let's say you evade one hit, you take a hit, you evade a hit. If you don't have that mechanic going, Your healer is bored, utterly panicked, bored. And it spreads that big hit out over the time. So your healer is bored, moderately panicked, okay, and then the fight continues.
Okay.
And the passive was working pretty well in the beta. It was an experimental change. Wasn't sure that it would really fit well with the game. And at one point, I was watching a group attempt the Urdrog on Elite 17 and just completely, constantly wipe over and over and over. And they were at this for probably 2 hours.
Wow.
No, this
okay.
was not the balance of the Urdrog that you're gonna get. This was a beta balance of the Urdrog, where he was hitting for a lot more. And they had a Chaos Tank and a Rifle Healer. And at the time, Rifle had some problems with it that made it a weaker healer than the other weapons. And this Chaos Tank was not using Ages of Parallelism, which is the passive I was talking about earlier.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was curious about it, and I suggested the tank use it. And the tank said, maybe. I don't think it'll help. And I'm sitting there going, I know for a fact that this would help, because what's happening is you're doing fine until you take 2 hits in a row. And that's when it all goes downhill, and on the 3rd hit that shows up, you always go splat. And so that night, this was actually a shower thoughts moment. I was going, how do I fix this problem with Chaos? Chaos is just too squishy if you don't take this passive. And going, well, also, Enigmas suck right now. So hold on a second. Maybe we can swap them out. So Chaos now has Agents of Parallelism as a baseline mechanic. It's built into the weapon now. So you can't have this case where you've got a Chaos Tank who refuses to take the thing that will keep him alive.
And how annoying is that?
And actually, a lot of the Chaos toolkit is built around Agents of Parallelism at this point as well. It's a very powerful mechanic.
I'm just kind of baffled by the individual who is doing this raid and just getting stomped over and over again. And then the game director comes in and says, or the lead designer comes in and says, hey, why don't you try this? And they're like, I don't know.
To his credit, he did try it a couple of attempts later, and it didn't solve the issue, but it helped a little.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, probably balancing still needed to happen, but yeah, it is. it is funny.
It was this experience of watching someone bash his head against it repeatedly, going, why won't this work? And I'm going, It's moments like that that are what make betas so good to have happen.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite closed beta moments was one of those, I didn't do anything special, but something just broke. Like,
okay, which one?
I knew that was coming.
What did you break?
So, like, there's a couple types of testers. There's those that are actively trying to break the game, and there's me, who just walk around and things fall apart around them for no particular reason.
I have a coworker who has the same curse. If he touches something, it stops working.
I don't know if you remember. You might remember this. This was like this was actually in the Dark Agartha testing phase, where like I was literally in Dark Agartha doing something, and some weird like cast came up or something, like something with a bunch of X's in it, like they clearly shouldn't have been there. And you're like, how the hell did you do that? I was like, I don't know. Fighting the boss. I don't know what happened. Because I think you were watching when I was doing it or something. And yeah, I don't know. The boss did something completely like it shouldn't have, and had like some weird cast that didn't have a name, had a bunch of X's instead. Like it did some weird funky stuff, and I literally did nothing special, right? I'm just doing my thing, and things go sideways, and it's like, what the hell is that? But yeah, that's no, probably not the only time it happened, but that one stuck in my head. And I think because it actually had like a cast bar that was completely like gibberish. Like, where the hell did that come from?
By the way, Brass Bolt. Brass Bolt is the winner of our giveaway.
Yes, they have their item.
Yes,
They have
Congrats.
used it in game.
they are now happily laughing evilly.
Yes, they're laughing maniacally. And that's a great. By the way, that's a great emote.
It is.
Like,
It's fantastic.
hats off to you guys for putting that in the game. You guys had like a good run actually. Yeah, you added a bunch that were really cool. The salt one was really great. Like that was pretty inspired as well. I didn't see that one coming.
So most of those were mocapped by Andy and Nicole, our community managers.
Really?
Yep.
That's
And they
brilliant.
came up with the ideas for most of them as well. We asked them to come up with ideas, and then our art director said, "Hey, you know what? You guys just mocap it. I'll just work with what you give me."
Chicken
So
Sue
they
says,
really came up with some good stuff.
That's
and
really
why
cool.
fix Krampus rockets? Oh, I just figured that was personally to mess with me. I assume fixing Krampus rockets was just a personal attack.
No more.
Yeah,
than
if anyone's not
ladders,
aware,
it was not.
if anyone's not aware, Krampus rockets are fixed in the balance pass. You can't.
Until someone
and-
proves they aren't. I'm still
Right.
waiting for that.
They are seemingly fixed. But
You know how
to
many
be fair,
times I have fixed Krampus rockets? I think this might be attempt number 5.
to be fair, I don't begrudge the need for them to be fixed because they do let you do ridiculous things and break completely out of geometry, which is obviously not intended, right? So like I don't begrudge fixing that. But they were fun. They were fun. So it will be sad to see them go. Much like riding a spider bike up a ladder. I will be sad to see them go.
I mean, the ladder had some technical problems with it.
I was
as
gonna
well.
say they said that was fixed for a reason. They said that was fixed for a
Yeah,
good reason.
no,
Yeah.
and technically you can kind of still run up ladders, which I'm sure probably also needs to be fixed. But you can. I think the term is you can combat run up ladders. But my morning stream used to start off every day with me and Kaiden using the spider bike to shoot up the ladder with the webbing underneath me, singing "Spider Bike, Spider Bike." Like that was literally like on my stream every day. It
Means
is
you
no
have a
longer.
ton of footage to reuse, right?
Actually, I think I only have like 3 clips, but I did clip them, so I do have them. I don't clip a lot of stuff, but yeah, it was a very common occurrence. But yeah, I concur that like I agree that these things like shooting up a ladder at sprint 6 or rocketing into the air and coming down outside of bounds probably are things that should eventually be fixed.
Eventually.
Yeah, like I mean, I can't be mad at broken stuff getting fixed. I can be sad. I can't be mad.
It just depends on what your personal definition of broken is, really.
I don't think there's any way that Krampus Rocket doesn't meet any definition of broken.
I would actually argue that the definition of broken is, the one that the developer says.
Okay.
I would argue that Krampus Rocket is the definition of broken.
It certainly fits the definition.
Like, you
Broken.
don't even call
See
it the
Krampus
broken
Rocket.
one. You just call it Krampus Rocketed. Oh, what happened to that piece of furniture? Oh, I got Krampus Rocketed. It's broken. Well, yeah.
Call it
they'll-
Krampus
they'll-
for short.
what?
Call it Krampus for short.
Krampus.
It got Krampus. Yeah. I do need to take mine into the last terrain instance and try and get them to work there before they don't work anymore. That's the one playfield I've never been able to rock it up. Like, I just die.
Okay.
So I think because potentially the skybox is moving.
More likely, there's just a death volume up there.
No, I'm not hitting a death like a death plane and dying. Like, it rockets me up, and then sort of I just fall back down, like off to the side of the train and die. Like, I think because if I'm understanding the way the Krampus rocket works, like it tries to put you back to where you were. Like that's why you jump off of something with some height, because then it like freaks out and just shoves you to the skybox. But I think because the environment is the thing that's moving in the train level and not the train itself, I think that messes with it. Does that make sense? It seems to counteract the properties that would normally make it work.
Sure.
Like the thing that makes it work is that thing you jumped off of. It tries to put you like back on, but
And now that's moved. It's in a different location.
yeah, so it's just
Yeah.
kind of, you get this weird, like you can gain some height and you can kind of float down a little bit, but it doesn't actually like do that trick where it just rockets puts a rocket up your butt and shoves you into the skybox permanently, like the roof of the skybox. It doesn't happen.
So, unless there's anything else, just kind of a going over of the beta that just went on, an indication of the big balance pass that's going to be going on. It's a big balance pass that is going on for tanks and for healers. A lot of the weapons are changing. We're going to see a lot of rebalancing. Weapon types kind of changing what they do. Return of the penthouse mini dungeon. The dungeon queues being merged down into 7 queues total.
But scaling up to E17.
But scaling up to E17, which is good. The dungeon scenario and lair keys sort of getting a rework.
I would say not even sort of. They are getting a rework.
Right, yeah.
It's a given.
I keep hedging my bets, yeah. Sort of. We'll see. And this is just, of course, the first of possible many betas to go on. So, but Nervel, thank you for joining us tonight. Much appreciated. Of
Thank you
course,
so much for inviting me.
it's always a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to use your personal time to come in and talk to us at night when you certainly don't have to. You're not getting paid for this. You could try putting in time for it.
I mean, if I'm going to start, I'm going to start with the beta weekends. But it's okay. It's perfectly okay. I'm really happy to be doing this.
Well, if you need me to sign off on anything, I'll sign off on something for you. Be like, who's this authorized by? Ocho.
We can send
keep that in mind.
cookies. We'll just mail you cookies. It's fine. Totally the same as getting paid.
Cookies.
Cookies.
So, again, yes, thank you for coming on, Nervel. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Agents, this has been the 0 Point Report, strain 24-PBJ. You can catch us recording live every other Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time here on the 0 Point Report Twitch channel, where you can also join us and chat with us while we do the show live. Or download our show wherever podcasts are found so you can listen to us on the go. You can get in touch with us by engaging with us on Twitter at 0 Point Report, emailing us at the0pointreport@gmail.com, checking out previous shows on our YouTube channel, and joining us on our Discord server, both named the 0 Point Report. From all of us here at the 0 Point Report, we want to thank you for tuning in and wish you all the best from the secret world. Have a great night, and we'll see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.
Have a good night.
Good night.